Damn it! What's happening? Jace's shout tore through the shadowed corridors of the Orion's Reach, his voice cracking as he sprinted down the dimly lit passage. Alarms wailed, their piercing shrieks clawing at his ears, while red lights pulsed like a heartbeat, threatening to swallow everything in their crimson glow. He couldn't believe he was here, deep in the ship's forbidden zone, a place spoken of only in fearful whispers among the crew. This wasn't his world. He was just a technician, a nobody who fixed circuits and kept the engines humming. Yet here he was, heart pounding, running for his life. Quiet, Luna hissed, her voice low but sharp, slicing through the chaos. Her footsteps were feather-light behind him, barely audible over the alarms. Her snow-white hair gleamed faintly in the dark, and those fox-like ears, pointed and alert, twitched at every sound. "They'll hear us!" Jace glanced back, catching Luna's glowing eyes. They burned with intensity, pinning him in place for a split second. He was still reeling. Just minutes ago, he'd been elbow-deep in wiring in the engine room. Now he was a fugitive, fleeing with an alien girl he'd freed from a cell. Her presence was surreal, her beauty otherworldly, her danger undeniable. "Sorry," he whispered, struggling to steady his breathing. "I've never done this before." Luna's lips curved into a fleeting smile, just enough to throw him off balance. "You're doing fine," she murmured, her voice a soft melody against the ship's harsh clamor. They pressed forward, weaving through the labyrinth of narrow corridors. The clatter of boots echoed closer now, guards closing in. Jace's pulse thundered in his chest. If they were caught, it wouldn't just be his job on the line. His life might be forfeit. But something about Luna, about the way she'd looked at him through those bars, had made turning back impossible. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper into the restricted zone, the ship's familiar hum fading into an oppressive silence. Jace had always been curious. Too curious, his supervisor said. But the rumors of alien captives and secret experiments had gnawed at him for weeks. Tonight, that curiosity had won, leading him to bypass security and sneak into the cells. He hadn't expected to find her. Luna had been curled in the corner of her cell, a vision of starlight and shadow. Her white hair spilled over fur-clad shoulders, adorned with tiny gemstones that caught the faint light. Her ears, delicate yet wild, had flicked toward him as he approached, and her eyes, large, luminous, filled with a mix of fear and defiance, had locked onto his, pulling him in like gravity. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was alive, vibrant, and desperate. "Help me," she'd pleaded, her voice threading through the silence like a song. Jace hadn't hesitated long. He'd cracked the cell's lock, his technician's skills overriding the system's defenses, and now they were running, bound together by a choice he couldn't undo. They rounded a corner, and Jace skidded to a halt, spotting a maintenance hatch embedded in the wall. "In here," he whispered urgently, yanking it open. Luna hesitated for a heartbeat, then slipped inside, her lithe form moving with eerie grace. Jace followed, squeezing into the cramped space and pulling the hatch shut behind them. The fit was tight, too tight. Luna's body pressed against his, her warmth seeping through the thin fabric of his jumpsuit. Her fur clothing brushed his arms, soft and strange, and her breath grazed his neck, carrying a faint, floral scent that didn't belong in this world of steel and oil. Jace's heart raced, and not just from the chase. He swallowed hard, trying to focus. Outside, guards stormed past, their voices sharp. "Check the cells, she can't have gone far." Jace held his breath, feeling Luna's steady pulse against him. Her calmness was unnerving, like she'd faced danger 1,000 times before. He risked a glance at her, her face inches from his, those glowing eyes studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "We can't stay here," he whispered. "There's a service tunnel to the lower decks. We might lose them there." She nodded, her gaze unwavering, trusting him despite the madness of their situation. Jace eased the hatch open, peering out. The corridor was clear, for now. He motioned for her to follow, and they slipped out, darting to a nearby panel. His fingers shook as he pried it open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. They climbed down, the air growing thick and warm, the engine's distant rumble vibrating through the walls. When they reached the bottom, Jace turned to her, catching his breath. "What's your name?" he asked, realizing he'd thrown his life into chaos for a stranger. "Luna," she said, her voice soft but steady, like a breeze over a quiet sea. "I'm Jace. Why were you locked up? What do they want with you?" Her expression darkened, a shadow crossing her delicate features. "I'm from Oralis. My people. We're different. We have abilities they want to control, to weaponize." Oralis. The name sparked a faint memory, tales of a distant world, shrouded in mystery, where beings wielded powers beyond human understanding. But there was no time to dig deeper. "There's a shuttle bay below," Jace said, his mind racing. "If we can grab a craft, we might get out." Luna's eyes flickered with hope. "A shuttle. Yes, I can help." They moved through the tunnels, Jace's knowledge of the ship's layout guiding them until they emerged into a corridor near the bay. Two guards stood at the entrance, their weapons glinting under the harsh lights. Jace cursed under his breath. "We need a distraction." Luna's gaze narrowed, and she closed her eyes. A faint glow pulsed from her fingertips, and suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from the far end of the corridor, like a crate had toppled. The guards spun, shouting, and raced toward the noise. Jace stared at her, jaw slack. "What was that?" "An illusion," she said, a hint of pride in her smile. "One of my gifts." They slipped into the shuttle bay, weaving past rows of sleek vessels. Jace zeroed in on a small, agile two-seater, perfect for a quick escape. He hacked the lock in seconds, his fingers flying over the controls. "Get in!" Luna slid into the co-pilot seat, and Jace sealed the hatch behind them. The shuttle's engines whined to life, but the alarm screamed again. "Unauthorized launch detected," the system blared. "Hold on," Jace growled, slamming the throttle. The shuttle surged forward, scraping through the bay doors just as they began to close, metal shrieking against metal. Space yawned before them, a vast sea of stars, endless and untamed. Jace punched in coordinates for a nearby planet, a barren rock, but far enough to shake their pursuers. He glanced at Luna, her white hair catching the console's soft glow, her eyes fixed on the stars with a mix of awe and determination. "Thank you, Jace," she said, her voice heavy with gratitude. "You didn't have to risk everything." He flashed a grin, adrenaline still coursing through him. "Couldn't leave you in that cell. Besides, life was getting a little too predictable." Her smile was small but warm, a spark in the darkness. But then the console beeped sharply. "Proximity alert," the system warned. "Incoming vessels." Jace's stomach dropped. The Orion's reach wasn't giving up. He met Luna's gaze, his voice firm. "This isn't over yet." With a flick of his wrist, he sent the shuttle spiraling toward the planet, the hull shuddering as they plunged into its atmosphere. The pursuing ships loomed closer, their lights piercing the void. Whatever lay ahead, Jace and Luna were bound together now, two souls caught in a desperate flight, and a connection that was only beginning to ignite. The shuttle screamed through the planet's atmosphere, its hull glowing cherry red as friction clawed at its edges. Jace gripped the controls, knuckles white, his jaw tight as he wrestled the craft through turbulent skies. The console's proximity alarm wailed, a relentless reminder that the Orion's reach had unleashed its hunters. Two sleek interceptors trailed them, their ion trails slicing the dark like knives. Jace's pulse hammered, but it wasn't just the chase setting his nerves alight. Luna sat beside him, her presence a quiet storm, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon, her fur-clad form radiating a strange, magnetic calm. "Jace," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, soft yet urgent. "They're gaining." "I see them," he grunted, flicking switches to reroute power to the thrusters. The shuttle lurched, engines roaring, but the interceptors matched their speed, closing the gap. He darted a glance at Luna, catching the way her white hair shimmered under the cockpit's dim lights, her fox-like ears twitching with every beep of the console. She was beautiful, dangerously so, and the way her gaze flicked to him, sharp and searching, sent a jolt through his chest that had nothing to do with fear. "Any more of those illusions up your sleeve?" he asked, half joking, half desperate. Her lips curved, a hint of mischief breaking through her tension. "Not in here, too confined, but—" She leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I can feel this ship, its pulse. If you trust me, I can guide you." Jace's skin prickled at her nearness, her floral scent wrapping around him like a spell. Trust her? He barely knew her, yet he'd already thrown his life into chaos for her. "Guide me," he said, voice rough. "Just don't get us killed." Her hand brushed his arm, cool and deliberate, sending a shiver down his spine. She closed her eyes, her fingers hovering over the console as if reading an invisible map. "There's a canyon ahead," she murmured. "Narrow, jagged. They won't follow us through." "A canyon?" Jace's eyes widened. "That's suicide. This shuttle's fast, but it's not built for tight maneuvers." Her eyes snapped open, locking onto his with an intensity that stole his breath. "You can do it. I know you can." Her faith in him was a spark, igniting something reckless and bold. He nodded, jaw set. "All right, canyon it is." The planet's surface loomed closer, a rugged sprawl of crimson rock and jagged peaks under a bruised, violet sky. The canyon appeared, a thin, twisting scar carved into the earth, its walls sharp as blades. Jace's stomach churned, but he angled the shuttle downward, plunging into the narrow gap. The walls closed in, rock blurring past inches from the hull. The interceptors hesitated, their lights faltering at the canyon's edge, but one peeled off to pursue, its engines a distant scream. Luna's hand found his thigh, gripping lightly, grounding him. "Steady," she whispered, her voice a lifeline. Her touch burned through his jumpsuit, stirring a heat he couldn't ignore. Even as the shuttle rattled violently, the cockpit was a cocoon of tension, their breaths mingling in the tight space, her nearness a distraction he could barely afford. "Focus. Jace," he muttered to himself, swerving to avoid a jutting spire. The shuttle groaned, metal straining, but held together. The interceptor was still behind them, its laser cannons flashing, bolts sizzling past and scorching the canyon walls. One grazed the shuttle's wing, sending a jolt through the frame. "Shields at 60%, the system warned. "Damn it," Jace hissed. "We can't take another hit." Luna's grip tightened, her nails digging in just enough to sharpen his senses. "There's a fork ahead," she said, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "Take the left path. It widens briefly, enough to evade." He didn't question her. He banked left, the shuttle tilting sharply, Luna's body pressing against his as gravity pulled them together. Her warmth, her scent, her quiet strength. It was overwhelming, a current pulling him under. The canyon opened slightly, just as she'd said, giving him room to weave through a series of tight turns. The interceptor misjudged a curve, its wing clipping a rock, sending it spiraling into the wall with a fiery crash. Jace let out a shaky laugh, adrenaline flooding his veins. "Nice call." Luna's smile was fleeting, but her eyes held his, warm and unguarded for a moment. "You're better than you think." The canyon narrowed again, forcing Jace to focus. They weren't out yet. The second interceptor was still out there, likely circling above, waiting for them to emerge. The shuttle's engines whined, overheating from the strain, and the console flashed warnings. They needed a plan, and fast. "There's a cave system at the canyon's end," Luna said, her voice low, almost intimate. "We can hide there. Let the ship cool down." Jace nodded, his mind racing. A cave sounded like a trap, but it was better than open sky with an interceptor on their tail. He pushed the shuttle harder, the walls blurring into a deadly tunnel. Luna's hand stayed on his thigh, her touch a quiet anchor, and he found himself hyper-aware of every shift in her posture, every soft exhale. The cave loomed ahead, a dark maw in the rock. Jace dove in, cutting the thrusters to glide silently into the shadows. The shuttle settled with a groan, dust swirling in the faint light filtering through the entrance. Outside, the interceptor's hum faded, its pilot likely scanning the surface. Jace killed the engines, the cockpit plunging into near darkness. The silence was heavy, broken only by their breathing. He turned to Luna, their faces close in the dim glow of the air, charged with something unspoken. Her eyes searched his, her lips parted slightly, and for a moment, the danger outside felt distant, the world narrowing to the space between them. "We're safe for now," she whispered, her voice husky, stirring a warmth in his core. "Yeah?" He tried, but his voice was tight, betraying the heat building inside him. Her hand slid from his thigh to his arm, her touch deliberate, tracing the line of muscle beneath his sleeve. The gesture was small, but it set his nerves alight, a spark threatening to ignite. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her gaze piercing. "You didn't know me. You could have walked away." Jace swallowed, his mouth dry. "I saw you in that cell. Those eyes. I couldn't leave you there. Felt like you were calling to me." Her smile was slow, almost predatory, and she leaned closer, her breath grazing his jaw. "You're braver than you know, Jace, or reckless." The air grew thick, the cockpit a world unto itself. Her fingers lingered on his arm, cool yet searing, and he felt his restraint fraying. He wanted to close the distance, to taste the mystery of her lips, to unravel the secrets she carried. But the console beeped softly, a sensor ping, faint but ominous. Luna pulled back, her ears twitching. "They're scanning," she said, her voice snapping back to alertness. "They're not giving up." Jace cursed under his breath, the moment slipping away. He checked the readings. The interceptor was sweeping the area, its sensors probing for their heat trail. "We need to mask our signature," he said, forcing his mind back to survival. "This cave's shielding us, but not for long." Luna nodded, her expression shifting to focus. "I can amplify the cave's energy field," she said, her hands glowing faintly. "It'll scramble their scans, make us invisible for a while." "Do it," Jace said, watching as she pressed her palms to the console. A soft hum filled the cabin, the air shimmering faintly as her power flowed. Her face was a mask of concentration, her lips parted, her eyes half closed, and Jace couldn't look away. The sight of her, wild, powerful, vulnerable, stirred something deep, a longing he hadn't known he carried. The hum faded, and Luna exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. "It's done," she said, meeting his gaze. "We have time now." Time. The word hung between them, heavy with possibility. Jace's heart raced, the danger outside only heightening the pull he felt toward her. Her hand found his again, her fingers intertwining with his, and the touch was electric, a silent question in her eyes. He leaned closer, drawn by a force stronger than fear. But before he could act, a faint tremor shook the cave, a distant explosion, too close for comfort. Luna's ears shot up, her body tensing. "They're bombing the surface," she said, her voice sharp. "Trying to flush us out." Jace's jaw tightened. The Orion's reach was relentless, and their stolen moment was gone. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice grim. "We need to move deeper. Find another way out." Luna nodded, her hand lingering on his for a moment longer before pulling away. "Together," she said, her voice a promise. As they prepared to venture into the cave's depths, Jace felt the weight of their bond growing, a fragile, fiery thing, forged in danger and desire. The chase wasn't over, and neither was the spark that burned between them, ready to flare at the slightest touch. The cave's darkness swallowed Jace and Luna, as they ventured deeper. The shuttle left behind in the shadowed hollow where they'd taken refuge. The air was thick with damp mineral tang, and the distant rumble of explosions from the surface sent faint tremors through the stone. Each one a reminder that the Orion's reach was hunting them with ruthless precision. Jace's flashlight cut a thin beam through the gloom, illuminating jagged walls that glistened like the inside of some ancient beast. Luna moved beside him, her steps silent, her fox-like ears twitching at every sound. Her hand brushed his as they navigated a narrow passage, a fleeting touch that sent a spark through him, rekindling the heat that had simmered in the cockpit moments ago. "We're running out of options," Jace said, his voice low, taut with the weight of their predicament. "If these caves don't lead somewhere, we're trapped." Luna's luminous eyes met his, steady despite the chaos. "They lead somewhere," she said, her voice a quiet promise. "I can feel it, a current, deep below. Oralis taught me to sense such things." Jace wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. He was a man of circuits and steel, not mystic currents. Still, her certainty was a lifeline, and he clung to it as they pressed on. The cave widened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, stalactites dripping like frozen tears. The ground sloped downward, and a faint hum vibrated through the rock, not the ship's engines, but something older, alien. Luna froze, her ears perked. "Wait," she whispered, her hand gripping his arm. Her touch was firm, urgent, and Jace's pulse quickened, his senses sharpening. "Something's here." Before he could respond, a low growl echoed through the chamber, primal and menacing. Jace swung his flashlight, its beam catching a glint of movement, eyes, too many eyes, glowing like embers in the dark. Shapes emerged, sleek and predatory, their bodies covered in crystalline scales that shimmered with each step. They were creatures of this world, drawn by the intruder's presence, and they were hungry. "Run!" Jace shouted, shoving Luna toward a narrow tunnel across the chamber. The creatures lunged, their claws scraping stone, their snarls filling the air. Jace's heart pounded as he sprinted, Luna's hand in his, her speed matching his despite her delicate frame. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to duck and twist, the creature's hot breath at their heels. They burst into another chamber, this one smaller, dominated by a glowing pool at its center. The water pulsed with an eerie blue light, casting ripples across the walls like a living heartbeat. Luna skidded to a halt, her eyes wide. "This is it," she gasped. "The current I felt. It's here." Jace glanced back, the creature's growls growing louder, their claws scraping closer. "Great, but we've got bigger problems." He scanned the room, spotting a heavy stone slab leaning against the wall. "Help me!" Together, they heaved the slab across the tunnel's entrance, sealing it just as a creature slammed against it, the impact shaking the ground. The slab held, for now. Jace leaned against it, panting, his body slick with sweat. Luna stood by the pool, her white hair catching the blue glow, her fur-clad form almost ethereal. She turned to him, her expression a mix of awe and fear. "This isn't just a cave," she said, her voice trembling with realization. "It's a temple. My people. They've been here before." Jace's brows furrowed. "Your people? Oralis is light years away. How?" "I don't know," she admitted, stepping closer to the pool. "But this energy, it's ours. It's why they want me. My abilities come from places like this." The slab shuddered as the creatures rammed it again, cracks spider webbing across its surface. Jace's stomach twisted. "Luna, we don't have time for archaeology. We need a way out." She knelt by the pool, her fingers trailing through the glowing water. A soft hum rose and the air shimmered, her power awakening. "There's a path," she murmured, her eyes half closed. "Below the water, a passage to the surface." Jace stared at the pool, its depths unreadable. "You're saying we dive into that, with no idea what's down there?" Her gaze met his, fierce and unwavering. Trust me, Jace, like I trusted you. Her words hit hard, stirring the bond that had grown between them. He nodded, his fear giving way to resolve. All right, together. But before they could move, the slab shattered, stone fragments flying as the creatures poured in, their crystalline bodies glinting like knives. Jace grabbed Luna, pulling her behind him, his flashlight his only weapon. Stay back, he shouted, swinging the beam, hoping to disorient them. Luna's hands glowed, and a pulse of light erupted from her, slamming into the nearest creature. It staggered, dazed, but the others pressed forward, undeterred. I can't hold them long, she cried, her voice strained. Jace's mind raced. The pool was their only shot, but diving meant leaving themselves vulnerable. Then he saw it, a crack in the ceiling, weakened by the creature's assault. Luna, can you hit that? He yelled, pointing upward. She followed his gaze, understanding, dawning. She raised her hands, her power surging, and a bolt of light struck the crack. The ceiling groaned, then collapsed, tons of rock crashing down, crushing the creatures in a cloud of dust. The chamber shook, stalactites plummeting, one narrowly missing Jace as he dove for cover. When the dust settled, the creatures were buried, but the pool's glow flickered, its energy destabilizing. Luna grabbed Jace's hand, her touch electric. Now, she urged, pulling him toward the water. They plunged in, the cold biting like 1,000 needles. The current was strong, dragging them downward. But Luna's grip was stronger. Her body pressed against his as they swam. The water glowed brighter, guiding them through a twisting passage, their lungs burning as they fought for air. Just when Jace thought he'd black out, they broke the surface, gasping in a shallow cave lit by faint daylight. They crawled onto the rocky shore, collapsing side by side, their chests heaving. Jace turned to Luna, her wet hair clinging to her face, her fur clothes soaked, accentuating every curve. Her eyes met his, raw and unguarded, and for a moment, the world was just them, two souls bound by survival and something deeper. You okay? He rasped, his voice rough from the ordeal. She nodded, her breath hitching. Thanks to you. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her cheek. Her skin was cool, soft, and the way she leaned into his touch sent a thrill through him. The danger wasn't over, but in that moment, it didn't matter. He wanted to pull her closer, to lose himself in her. But a distant roar snapped them back, the interceptor, circling above, its scanners probing. Luna's ears twitched, her body tensing. They're close, she whispered. Too close. Jace's jaw tightened. Then we keep moving. What's next? She stood, her gaze distant, as if listening to something beyond his hearing. This planet, it's not what it seems. The temple, the creatures, it's all connected to Aralis. There's a signal here, calling to my people. If we find it, we might find help. Jace's eyes widened. A signal? You mean there could be more of you here? Or worse, she said, her voice heavy. The Orion's reach might not be the only ones hunting us. The revelation hit like a shockwave, raising more questions than answers. Who was Luna? Really? What power did she carry? And why was it worth killing for? Jace stood, offering his hand. Let's find out. She took it, her fingers intertwining with his, her touch a promise of trust and something unspoken. As they stepped into the daylight, the planet's crimson landscape stretching before them, the interceptor's shadow loomed overhead, a reminder that their fight was far from over. But the biggest surprise lay ahead, hidden in the sands, waiting to upend everything they thought they knew. The crimson sands of the planet stretched endlessly before Jace and Luna, the horizon shimmering under a violet sky that felt too vast, too alien. The interceptor's shadow had vanished for now, its engines a faint hum lost in the wind. But Jace knew better than to relax. The Orion's reach was still out there, its hunters circling like vultures. His hand stayed clasped in Luna's. Her cool fingers a steady anchor as they trekked toward the source of the mysterious signal she'd sensed. Her words from the cave echoed in his mind. A connection to Oralis, a call to her people, or something worse. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but so did the warmth of her touch, a pull that made every step feel like a dance between danger and desire. Luna's fox-like ears twitched, catching sounds he couldn't hear. "The signal's stronger now," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "It's close, maybe a mile ahead, buried in the dunes." Jace nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. The planet's heat was relentless, his jumpsuit clinging to his skin, and Luna's fur outfit, still damp from their dive, didn't seem to fare much better. "You sure about this?" he asked, half teasing. "Last time you followed a feeling, we nearly became lunch for crystal lizards." Her lips quirked, a spark of amusement in her glowing eyes. "They weren't lizards, and I got us out, didn't I?" "Fair point," he grinned, but the humor faded as a gust of wind whipped sand into their faces. He squinted, spotting a dark shape in the distance, a structure half buried, its edges glinting like polished obsidian. "That it?" Luna's ears perked, her expression sharpening. "Yes, but on something's off. It's too quiet." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Despite the heat, they quickened their pace, the sand sucking at their boots, until the structure loomed clearer, a sleek, dome-like ruin, its surface etched with swirling symbols that pulsed faintly, matching the blue glow they'd seen in the temple. It was alien, ancient, and unmistakably tied to Luna's people. But as they approached, the ground trembled, and a low hum rose, vibrating through their bones. Luna?" Jace's voice cracked. "Is that supposed to happen?" She froze, her hand tightening on his. "No, it's a defense system. We've triggered it." Before he could process her words, the sand erupted around them, mechanical tendrils whipping out like serpents. Jace yelped, yanking Luna back as a tendril lashed inches from their feet. "Defense system?" he shouted, dodging another. "You didn't mention killer robots." "I didn't know," she shot back, her voice edged with panic. Her hands glowed, and a pulse of light knocked a tendril aside, but more emerged, their tips sparking with energy. "Run for the dome!" They sprinted, sand flying, the tendrils pursuing with eerie precision. Jace's heart pounded, his lungs burning, but Luna's grace kept him moving, her hand pulling him forward. They reached the dome's entrance, a narrow archway, just as a tendril grazed Jace's leg, its shock numbing his calf. He stumbled, cursing, and Luna hauled him inside, her strength surprising for her slight frame. They collapsed against the wall, panting, the tendril's hum fading as the archway sealed itself with a shimmer of light. The interior was cool, dimly lit by the same pulsing symbols, the air heavy with a metallic tang. Jace rubbed his leg, wincing. "Okay, remind me never to follow your feelings again." Luna's ears flicked, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "You're alive, aren't you?" "Barely," he muttered, but his grin betrayed him. Her concern, the way her eyes scanned him for injury, stirred something warm in his chest. He stood, testing his leg, and caught her watching him, her gaze lingering a beat too long. The air shifted, charged with the same tension from the shuttle, and Jace felt his pulse quicken. "Stop looking at me like that," he said, half joking, his voice lower than intended. Her lips parted, a faint flush coloring her pale cheeks. "Like what?" "Like you're, I don't know, figuring me out." He stepped closer, unable to resist the pull. "It's distracting." Her smile was slow, almost teasing. "Good. You need distracting." The words hung between them, playful yet heavy, and Jace's restraint wavered. He was close enough to feel her warmth, to catch that floral scent that drove him wild. But before he could act, a loud clunk echoed through the dome, and the floor lurched, dropping them into a slide-like chute. Jace yelped, flailing, and Luna grabbed him, their bodies tangling as they tumbled downward. They landed in a heap, Jace on his back, Luna sprawled across his chest, her hair spilling over his face like a curtain. For a moment, neither moved, their breaths mingling, her weight a startlingly pleasant pressure. Her glowing eyes were inches from his, wide with surprise, and Jace's hands instinctively on her waist felt the soft fur of her outfit, the curve beneath it. He stammered, his face heating. This wasn't in the plan. Luna's ears twitched, and she let out a soft laugh, the sound disarming. No, it wasn't. She shifted, her thigh brushing his, and the contact sent a jolt through him. She didn't pull away, her gaze holding his, and the awkwardness melted into something electric. Okay, this is officially the weirdest day of my life, Jace said, trying to lighten the mood, but his voice was thick. First aliens, then killer caves. Now, this. Her smile widened, a hint of mischief in it. You're handling it well. Am I? He raised a brow, his hands still on her waist, unsure if he should move them. Because I'm pretty sure I'm about to do something stupid. Her breath hitched, and she leaned closer, her lips dangerously near. Maybe I like stupid. The dome's hum grew louder, snapping them out of the moment. Luna sprang up, offering a hand to pull him to his feet. Jace took it, his skin tingling from her touch, and they faced the chamber they'd landed in, a vast, circular room dominated by a towering crystal at its center, pulsing with the same blue energy. Symbols danced across its surface, and a holographic interface flickered to life, projecting images of stars, planets, and ships, alien ships. Unlike anything Jace had seen, Luna's expression darkened. This is the signal source, she said, her voice tight. A beacon, but it's not just calling my people. It's broadcasting to others, predators, hunters. Jace's stomach dropped. You're saying we just walked into a galactic SOS that's attracting the wrong crowd? She nodded, her ears flattening. The Orion's Reach must have known. That's why they wanted me, to control this. A tremor shook the chamber, and the hologram flickered, showing a new image, a massive ship descending through the planet's atmosphere, its hull bristling with weapons. Not the Orion's Reach, but something far worse, alien, angular, and menacing. Jace's mouth went dry. That's not our guys, is it? No, Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. It's a Dravex warship. They hunt my kind for sport. The drama peaked, Jace's mind racing. They'd escaped one threat only to stumble into another, and the dome meant to be their salvation was a trap. He grabbed Luna's hand, his voice firm despite the fear. We need to shut this down. Can you do it? She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the crystal. Maybe, but it'll take time, and it might expose us. Great, Jace said, forcing a grin. No pressure, then. Just save the galaxy while I try not to get us killed. Her laugh was brief but genuine, cutting through the tension. Deal. As Luna approached the crystal, her hands glowing, Jace scanned the chamber for defenses, his technician's mind kicking into gear. The Dravex ship was coming. The Orion's Reach was still out there, and the dome's secrets were unraveling. The awkward tumble, the near kiss, it all fueled his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for survival now. He was fighting for her. The crystal pulsed faster, Luna's power clashing with its energy, and the chamber shook again, cracks forming in the walls. Jace's heart pounded, the stakes higher than ever, but a small part of him couldn't help but smile. Whatever came next, he and Luna were in it together. Awkward moments, bad jokes, and all. The chamber trembled as Luna's glowing hands pressed against the towering crystal, its pulsing blue light clashing with her energy. Cracks snaked through the dome's walls, dust raining down. Each shudder a reminder of the Dravex warship descending and the Orion's Reach still hunting them. Jace stood guard, his eyes scanning the flickering holographic interface, its images of alien ships and star charts a chilling promise of danger. Yet, despite the chaos, his gaze kept drifting to Luna, her white hair shimmering, her fox-like ears twitching, her fur-clad form taut with focus. The memory of their tumble, her body pressed against his, lingered like a spark, threatening to ignite. "Jace," Luna called, her voice strained but steady. "I'm close. The beacon's resisting, but I can shut it down." He nodded, moving to her side, his technician's instincts kicking in. "Anything I can do? Rewire something? Smash it?" Her lips curved, a fleeting smile breaking her concentration. "Just stay close. Your presence helps." The words, simple yet intimate, sent a warmth through him. He stayed near, his shoulder brushing hers, the contact grounding them both. The crystal's hum grew erratic, its light dimming under Luna's power. But the chamber shook harder, a deep groan echoing from above. Jace glanced up, his stomach twisting. "We're running out of time. That warship's gonna turn this place into rubble." Luna's eyes met his, fierce and determined. "I know, just a little longer." Her hands glowed brighter, and a surge of energy rippled through the air, the beacon's signal faltering. The hologram flickered out, and the crystal went dark, its hum silenced. Luna exhaled, swaying slightly, her face pale. Jace caught her, his hands steady on her waist, her body soft and warm against him. "You did it," he said, his voice low, filled with awe. "You actually did it." She leaned into him, her breath uneven. "We did it," she corrected, her glowing eyes locking onto his. The air between them thickened, charged with relief and something deeper. The danger hadn't passed, but in that moment, the world narrowed to the space they shared, the heat of her skin, the curve of her lips, the way her ears twitched as his fingers tightened on her waist. The chamber's tremors faded, leaving a heavy silence. Jace's pulse raced, his body hyper-aware of her nearness. "Luna," he started, his voice rough. "Back there, when we fell, I—" Her finger pressed against his lips, silencing him. "I felt it too," she whispered, her voice a velvet caress. "You don't need to say it." Her touch sent a shiver through him, and he couldn't hold back. He leaned in, closing the distance, and she met him halfway, their lips brushing in a tentative, electric kiss. It was soft at first, exploratory, but the spark ignited, and the kiss deepened, hungry and urgent. Her hands slid up his chest, fingers curling into his jumpsuit, while his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. The fur of her outfit was a tantalizing contrast to the smoothness of her skin, and the floral scent of her filled his senses, intoxicating. They stumbled back, finding a smooth section of the chamber wall, the cool stone a stark contrast to the heat building between them. Luna's lips parted, her breath hitching as Jace's hands traced the curve of her spine, careful yet bold. Her fox-like ears brushed his cheek, tickling, and he chuckled against her mouth, the sound breaking the intensity for a moment. "What?" she murmured, pulling back slightly, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Your ears," he said, grinning. "They're distracting." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that made his heart skip. "You'll get used to them." Her fingers trailed down his jaw, her touch deliberate, stirring a fire in his core. "Or maybe you won't." The playful challenge in her voice drove him wild. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands exploring the contours of her hips, the fur of her clothing yielding to the warmth beneath. She pressed herself closer, her body molding to his, and the world outside, the warship, the hunters, the beacon, faded into a distant hum. Her hands found the zipper of his jumpsuit, tugging it down slowly, her fingers brushing his skin, sending jolts of desire through him. "Luna," he gasped, pulling back just enough to meet her gaze. "Are you sure? Here. Now." Her smile was both tender and fierce. "We might not get another chance. I want this." I want you." Her words were a spark to dry tinder. He lifted her gently, her legs wrapping around his waist as he pressed her against the wall, their kisses growing fervent. Her hands roamed his shoulders, her nails grazing lightly, and he felt the strength in her, the wildness of Auralis pulsing through her touch. The moment was raw, unguarded, a stolen breath in the storm of their escape. Their connection deepened, not just physical but emotional, a bond forged in trust and shared peril. The chamber's silence was their cocoon, but it couldn't last. A faint hum broke through, growing louder, a mechanical whine from above. Luna's ears shot up, her body tensing in his arms. "They're here," she whispered, her voice sharp with alarm. Jace lowered her gently, his heart still racing, the heat of their closeness lingering. He zipped his jumpsuit, his hands unsteady, while Luna adjusted her fur outfit. Her cheeks flushed. "The warship?" he asked, his voice tight. She nodded, her eyes scanning the chamber. "Or the Orion's reach. Maybe both. The beacon's down, but they tracked us." He cursed under his breath, the moment's intimacy shattered by reality. The chamber's cracks had widened, and faint light filtered through, revealing a narrow passage leading upward. "There," he said, pointing. "We need to move." Luna grabbed his hand, her touch still electric, a promise of more to come. "Together," she said, echoing their earlier vow. They climbed through the passage, the hum growing louder, accompanied by the clank of metal, drones likely sent to scout the ruins. The passage opened into a shallow alcove overlooking the crimson dunes, the dome half collapsed behind them. In the sky, the Dravex warship loomed, a jagged silhouette, its lights sweeping the sands. Closer, the Orion's Reach's interceptors circled, their engines a menacing growl. Jace's stomach dropped. "We're pinned. 2 armies. 1 us." Luna's hand tightened on his. "Not just us," she said, her voice low, cryptic. The signal wasn't only a beacon, it was a call for help. He turned to her, confusion mixing with hope. "Help? From who?" Her eyes gleamed, a secret dancing in them. "My people. They're coming." Before he could press her, a drone buzzed into view, its red eye locking onto them. Jace shoved Luna behind a rock, his body shielding hers, the memory of their closeness fueling his resolve. The drone's laser hummed, charging, and Jace braced for impact. But a blinding flash erupted, and the drone exploded, debris raining down. Jace blinked, stunned, as a sleek, silver craft streaked across the sky. Unlike any human or Dravex ship, its lines were organic, almost alive, and it fired again, scattering the interceptors. Luna's face lit up, her ears perking. "They're here," she whispered, awe in her voice. "Who?" Jace demanded, his mind reeling. "Auralis," she said, turning to him, her gaze fierce and radiant. "My family." The craft descended, kicking up sand, its hatch opening to reveal figures, tall, luminous, with white hair and fox-like ears, their presence both regal and deadly. The Dravex warship fired, its cannons shaking the ground. But the Aurelian ship countered, a dance of light and destruction unfolding above. Jace's heart pounded, the stakes higher than ever. But Luna's hand in his was a lifeline, their bond unshaken. As the battle raged, one of the Aurelians approached, their eyes locking onto Luna. "Sister," they said, their voice resonant, "you've brought chaos." Luna's grip on Jace tightened, her voice defiant. "And hope." The word hung in the air, a promise and a challenge, as the sands erupted in battle, their stolen moment of passion now a spark to fuel their fight for survival. The crimson dunes roared with chaos as the Aurelian craft clashed with the Dravex warship, beams of light slicing through the violet sky. Sand erupted in geysers where cannon fire struck, and the Orion's Reach's interceptors weaved through the fray, their lasers a desperate counterpoint to the alien onslaught. Jace crouched behind a jagged rock, Luna's hand still clasped in his, her warmth a tether in the storm. The Aurelian who'd called her sister stood before them, their white hair whipping in the wind, their glowing eyes fixed on Luna with a mix of relief and reproach. The word hope hung between them, Luna's defiant promise echoing in Jace's ears, but the battle's fury left no room for clarity. "Sister?" Jace whispered, his voice barely cutting through the din. "Luna, what's going on?" Luna's ears twitched, her grip tightening. "Tiva," she said, nodding toward the Aurelian. "My kin. I didn't expect them so soon." Tiva's gaze shifted to Jace, sharp and assessing, like a blade sizing up its target. "This human," they said, their voice resonant, almost musical. "He's the one who freed you?" "Yes," Luna replied, her tone fierce. "He's with me." Jace's chest tightened at her words, a rush of pride mingling with confusion. But before he could speak, a deafening boom shook the ground, and a Dravex missile struck the dome's ruins, sending debris flying. Tiva raised a hand, their power flaring, and a shimmering barrier deflected the shards, protecting them. "We must move," Tiva said, their voice urgent. "The Dravex seek the beacon's source. They know its power." Luna nodded, pulling Jace to his feet. "The ship," she said, glancing at the Aurelian craft, its sleek form hovering amid the chaos. "It's our only way out." They sprinted toward it, dodging laser fire and leaping over craters. Jace's lungs burned, his body aching from the day's trials. But Luna's presence fueled him, her strength a mirror to his own. Tiva led the way, their movements fluid, almost otherworldly, clearing a path with pulses of light that scattered Dravex drones. The craft's hatch loomed ahead, a beacon of escape. But Jace's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. Too easy. Too fast. They reached the ramp, Tiva ushering them inside. The interior was unlike any ship Jace had seen. Walls that pulsed with soft light, surfaces smooth as water, and a hum that felt alive. Aurelians moved with purpose, their fox-like ears and luminous eyes marking them as Luna's kin. But as the hatch sealed, shutting out the battle's roar, Jace caught Tiva's glance, a flicker of something guarded, almost cold. "Strap in," Tiva ordered, gesturing to seats that molded to their forms. Jace sat beside Luna, her thigh brushing his, the memory of their stolen moment in the dome still burning in his veins. She met his gaze, her eyes soft but troubled, as if sensing his unease. The ship lurched, engines singing, and they soared upward, the planet's crimson surface shrinking below. The Dravex warship fired, but the Aurelian craft danced through the barrage, its shields flaring. Jace gripped his seat, his technician's mind marveling at the tech. But his heart was with Luna, her hand finding his under the armrest, a quiet reassurance. "We're clear," Tiva announced, their voice cutting through the cabin's hum. "The Dravex are falling back. The Orion's reach is retreating." Jace exhaled, tension easing slightly. "That's good, right?" He looked to Luna, hoping for confirmation. Her smile was faint, strained. "For now," Tiva approached, their expression unreadable. "Luna, we need to speak. Alone." Jace's brows furrowed, but Luna squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll be back." She followed Tiva to a secluded corner of the cabin, their voices low, their gestures sharp. Jace watched, unease growing. The other Aurelians avoided his gaze, their silence heavy. He leaned back, trying to process the whirlwind, cells, caves, kisses, and now this. Luna's people were here, but their arrival felt less like salvation and more like a new puzzle. Minutes passed, and Luna returned, her face pale, her ears flattened. Jace stood, concern flaring. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, her eyes searching his, as if weighing a truth too heavy to share. "Tiva, they know why I was taken. The beacon wasn't just a signal, it's a key." "A key?" Jace's voice rose, drawing glances from the Aurelians. To what? Luna's voice dropped, barely a whisper. To a weapon, one my people built eons ago, hidden in this sector. The Orion's Reach wanted it. The Dravex want it. And, she swallowed, her gaze faltering. Tiva thinks I'm the only one who can activate it. Jace's mind reeled. You? Why? Before she could answer, the ship shuddered, alarms blaring, not from attack, but from within. The cabin's lights dimmed, and a holographic figure materialized at the center, its form shifting, unstable. It was Luna, or a perfect copy, her white hair and fox-like ears unmistakable, but her eyes were cold, mechanical. Greetings, the hologram said, its voice a distorted echo of Luna's. I am the Keeper, guardian of the Aurelian Vault. The key has returned. The weapon awakens. Jace's jaw dropped, his heart pounding. He turned to Luna, who stared at the hologram, her face a mask of shock. What the hell is that? He demanded. I don't know, she stammered, her voice trembling. I've never seen it before. Tiva stepped forward, their expression grim. The Keeper is a failsafe, created to protect the weapon. It's tied to your essence. Luna, your capture triggered its activation? Jace's head spun. Wait, you're saying Luna's some kind of cosmic key? And this thing's been waiting for her? Yes, Tiva said, their voice heavy. But there's more. They turned to Luna, their gaze piercing. The Keeper isn't just a guardian. It's a mirror, a fragment of your mind, preserved when you were born. It knows what you know. It is you, in part. Luna's eyes widened, her hand slipping from Jace's. That's impossible, she whispered. I'd remember. Would you? Tiva challenged. Your memories were sealed, to protect you, to protect us all. Jace's stomach twisted, the twist hitting like a shockwave. Luna wasn't just a fugitive or a gifted Aurelian. She was something more, something engineered, her very existence tied to a weapon that could reshape the galaxy. He reached for her, his voice urgent. Luna, look at me. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out. Her gaze met his, raw and vulnerable, but the hologram spoke again, its voice cutting through. The vault opens in 12 cycles. The key must comply, or the weapon will self-destruct, erasing this sector. Jace's blood ran cold. Self-destruct? As in, blow up the planet? The system? Correct, the Keeper said, its cold eyes fixed on Luna. The key's purpose is to serve. Refusal is not an option. Luna swayed, and Jace caught her, his arms steady despite the chaos in his mind. No way, he growled. She's not your puppet. Tiva's voice was soft, almost pitying. She may have no choice. The Keeper is her shadow. It will hunt her if she resists. The hologram flickered, then vanished, leaving a chilling silence. Luna clung to Jace, her body trembling, and he held her tight, his heart aching. The Aurelians watched, their expressions unreadable, and Jace felt the weight of their scrutiny. The ship's hum was a distant pulse, the battle outside forgotten as the true threat emerged, not from Dravex or humans, but from within Luna herself. We need to find this vault, Jace said, his voice firm, masking his fear. If it's tied to you, maybe we can control it. Shut it down. Luna nodded, her resolve returning, but her eyes were haunted. It's not just the vault. It's me. What if I'm not who I thought? Jace cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. You're Luna, the woman who fought with me, trusted me. That's who you are. Her smile was fragile, but it was enough. Tiva approached, their voice low. The vault's location is encoded in the Keeper's signal. We're tracking it now, but the Dravex and your human hunters will follow. Let them, Jace said, his jaw set. We'll be ready. As the ship charted its course, Luna leaned into him, her warmth a quiet promise. The twist, that she was both key and weapon, changed everything. Yet their bond held, a spark in the dark. But the keeper's cold gaze lingered in Jace's mind, a shadow of Luna that threatened to tear them apart. The Aurelian ship hummed through the void, its organic curves slicing past stars as it chased the keeper's signal toward the mysterious vault. Inside, the cabin's soft glow felt like a fragile shield against the chaos waiting beyond. Jace sat beside Luna, her hand still in his, her warmth a quiet anchor after the keeper's chilling revelation. The idea that she was both key and weapon, a creation tied to a galactic doomsday device, hung heavy between them, but her steady gaze grounded him. Tiva and the other Aurelians moved with quiet purpose, their fox-like ears twitching, their luminous eyes avoiding Jace's. The air was thick with unspoken tension, and Jace couldn't shake the feeling that Luna's people saw him as an outsider, or worse, a liability. Luna leaned closer, her voice low. "You're quiet. What's wrong?" Jace forced a grin, though his heart raced. "Oh, just processing that whatever we are, might blow up the galaxy. No big deal." Her lips quirked, a spark of humor breaking through her worry. "Whatever we are," she teased, her glowing eyes narrowing. "You'll have to do better than that. Human." The playful jab eased the knot in his chest, but before he could retort, Tiva approached, their expression stern. "We've located the vault," they announced. "It's on an asteroid in the Korath belt, heavily shielded, but the Dravex and your human pursuers are converging. We must act quickly." Jace's stomach twisted. "Great. 2 armies, 1 asteroid, and a cosmic bomb. Sounds like a party." Tiva's ears flicked, their gaze cold. "Your humor is unhelpful." Luna squeezed his hand, her voice firm. "He's right, though. We're walking into a trap. What's the plan?" Tiva hesitated, a rare crack in their composure. "The vault requires your essence to open. We'll escort you inside, neutralize the weapon, and destroy the Keeper's link." Jace didn't like the sound of that. "Her essence? You mean, what? Her blood? Her mind? Be specific." Tiva's silence was answer enough, and Luna's grip tightened, her ears flattening. "I'll do what's needed," she said, but her voice wavered, betraying her fear. Jace stood, his protective instincts flaring. "Hold on. You're not turning her into some sacrificial lab rat. We do this together, or not at all." Tiva's eyes narrowed, but before they could argue, the ship lurched, alarms blaring. The cabin's lights flickered, and a voice, eerily like Luna's, echoed through the speakers. "The key approaches. The vault awaits." Jace's blood ran cold. "The Keeper," he muttered, glancing at Luna. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with dread. "It's hacking our systems," Tiva snapped, rushing to a console. "Brace for impact." The ship shuddered again, and Jace grabbed Luna, pulling her to the floor as sparks flew from a panel. The Aurelians scrambled, their calm shattered, and Jace's technician's mind kicked into gear. "I can help," he shouted, crawling to the console. "Give me access." Tiva hesitated, then nodded, their fingers flying over the controls. Jace dove in, his hands steady despite the chaos, rerouting power to block the Keeper's intrusion. Luna stayed close, her presence calming him, but the awkwardness of their earlier moment lingered, amplified by the danger. Luna," he said, fumbling with a wire. "Maybe don't stand so close. You're distracting." She raised a brow, her ears perking despite the alarms. "Distracting? Now? You're impossible." He grinned, the humor a brief escape. "Yeah, well, blame your everything." Her laugh was soft, but it cut through the tension, and for a moment, they were just Jace and Luna, not Key and Fugitive. The ship stabilized, the Keeper's voice silenced, and Jace exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Got it. For now." Tiva's gaze softened slightly. "Well done, human." "Name's Jace," he said, standing. "And you're welcome." Luna's hand brushed his arm, her touch electric, but the moment was broken by a new alarm. Proximity sensors. The view screen flickered, showing the Korath belt, a chaotic swirl of asteroids, and among them, the Dravex warship and Orion's Reach's fleet, closing in. At the belt's center, a massive asteroid pulsed with faint blue light. The vault. "We're out of time," Tiva said. "We must reach the vault before they do." The ship dove into the belt, weaving through tumbling rocks, the Aurelian pilot's skill keeping them alive. Jace and Luna strapped into seats, their hands clasped, the stakes higher than ever. The vault loomed closer, its surface etched with Aurelian symbols, but the Keeper's presence lingered, a shadow in the ship's systems. As they approached, a hatch opened on the asteroid, a docking bay beckoning, but the Dravex fired, a missile grazing the ship, sending it spinning. Jace's stomach lurched, and Luna's grip tightened, her nails digging in. The pilots regained control, guiding them into the bay, but the landing was rough, metal screeching as they skidded to a stop. The hatch opened, and Tiva led the way, Luna and Jace following, their boots echoing in the cavernous bay. The air was cold, heavy with the same metallic tang as the dome, and the walls pulsed with blue light. But as they advanced, a figure emerged from the shadows, not the Keeper, but a human, clad in Orion's Reach armor, his face scarred and familiar. "Captain Varn," Jace hissed, recognizing the man who'd overseen the ship's experiments. "You're alive," Varn smirked, his weapon trained on them. "Surprised? Technician? You've caused me a lot of trouble. Hand over the girl." Luna stepped forward, her hands glowing, but Jace pulled her back, his voice low. "Not happening," Varn laughed, gesturing to the shadows, where Dravex warriors appeared, their crystalline armor glinting. "You're outnumbered. The vault's mine, and so is she." The drama peaked, Jace's heart pounding. He glanced at Luna, her eyes fierce, and Tiva, whose calm masked a storm. But the awkwardness came crashing in when Varn's gaze lingered on Luna, his smirk turning lewd. "Didn't know you had a thing for aliens. Jace, she's a prize. I'll give you that." Jace's face heated, his fists clenching. "Keep talking, Varn. See how that works out." Luna's ears twitched, and she shot Jace a look, half amused, half exasperated. "Really? You're arguing about this now?" "What?" he whispered, flustered. "He started it!" Her laugh was a spark in the dark, and even Tiva's lips twitched, the humor a fleeting relief. But Varn's patience snapped. "Enough! Surrender! Or—" Before he could finish, the ground shook, and the Keeper's voice boomed, its hologram flickering into existence. "The key is mine," it declared, its cold eyes fixed on Luna. "None shall claim the vault," the Dravex roared, turning on the hologram, and chaos erupted. Tiva's power flared, scattering enemies, while Jace grabbed Luna, diving for cover behind a console. Lasers crisscrossed the bay, and the Keeper's hologram pulsed, its energy destabilizing the walls. Jace's mind raced. He knew systems, but this was beyond human tech. "Luna," he said, dodging a blast. "Can you fight that thing? It's part of you, right?" Her face paled, but she nodded. "I'll try, but I need you with me. Always," he said, his voice steady despite the fear. He kissed her quickly, a desperate promise, and she smiled, her glow intensifying. As Luna faced the Keeper, her power clashing with its, Jace worked the console, trying to disrupt its signal. Varn and the Dravex fought around them, the bay a battlefield, but Jace's focus was Luna, her strength, her vulnerability, their bond. The Keeper screamed, its form glitching, and Luna staggered, blood trickling from her nose. "Luna!" Jace shouted, rushing to her side. "I'm okay," she gasped, leaning on him. "It's weakening." But Varn seized the moment, lunging at them, his blade gleaming. Jace tackled him, the two rolling across the floor, fists flying. "You're done, Varn!" Jace growled, pinning him. The Keeper's voice cut through, its tone shifting, pleading. Luna, join me. We are one. The vault is our destiny. Luna's eyes widened, her resolve wavering, and Jace's heart stopped. The twist from before deepened. What if the Keeper wasn't just a shadow, but a part of her she couldn't escape? The drama, the awkward clash with Varn, the humor, it all fueled their fight, but the vault's secrets threatened to tear them apart. The vault's docking bay was a maelstrom of light and sound, lasers crisscrossing the air as the Keeper's hologram pulsed with erratic energy. Luna stood at the center, her hands glowing, her white hair whipping around her as she battled the spectral fragment of herself. Blood trickled from her nose, her body trembling from the strain, but her eyes burned with defiance. Jace wrestled with Captain Varn on the cold floor, their fists colliding, the human traitor's blade glinting inches from Jace's throat. Tiva and the Aurelians fought the Dravex warriors, their crystalline armor shattering under pulses of light. But the Keeper's voice, both Luna's and Not, cut through the chaos, pleading, commanding, "Join me. We are one." Jace's heart pounded, his muscles burning as he shoved Varn back, pinning the captain's wrist to the ground. "You're finished," he growled, slamming Varn's head against the floor, dazing him. He sprang up, dodging a Dravex claw, and rushed to Luna's side, his breath ragged. Her glow flickered, her strength waning, and the Keeper's hologram loomed larger, its cold eyes fixed on her. "Luna!" Jace shouted, grabbing her shoulders. "You're stronger than this thing. You're you, not some weapon." Her gaze met his, haunted but fierce, and she leaned into his touch, drawing strength from it. "It's part of me," she gasped, her voice breaking. "If I destroy it, I might—" "No," Jace cut her off, his voice firm. "You're not losing yourself. We do this together." Her lips trembled, but she nodded, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining. The contact was electric, a lifeline, and Jace felt their bond, a spark forged in cells, caves, and stolen kisses, surge through him. He turned to the console he'd been working, its alien interface now familiar to his technician's hands. "Keep it busy," he said. "I'll cut its power." Luna's glow flared, and she pushed back against the Keeper, a wave of light slamming into its hologram, making it glitch. Jace dove for the console, his fingers flying, rerouting energy flows to overload the vault's systems. The Keeper screamed, its voice a distorted wail, and the walls shook, cracks widening. Tiva fought nearby, their power scattering Dravex, but one broke through, lunging at Jace. Before it could strike, Luna's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. A pulse of light erupted, hurling the warrior back, its armor shattering. She staggered, blood now streaking her cheek, but her eyes locked on Jace, fierce with love and resolve. "Hurry," she whispered. Jace's heart swelled, his hands moving faster. He found the Keeper's core, a digital knot tied to Luna's essence, and severed its link, rerouting power to a feedback loop. The console sparked, and the Keeper's hologram flickered, its form collapsing. "No!" it cried, its voice fading. "The key must—" It vanished, the vault's hum dying with it. Luna collapsed, and Jace caught her, cradling her against his chest. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, but her ears twitched faintly, a sign of life. "Luna," he murmured, brushing her hair back. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, weak but warm. "I'm here," she whispered, her hand resting on his chest. "You did it." "We did it," he corrected, his voice thick with relief. He kissed her forehead, the gesture soft but fierce, and she smiled, her glow returning faintly. The battle around them slowed, the Dravex retreating as Tiva's power overwhelmed them. Varn lay unconscious, his threat ended, and the Aurelians secured the bay. Tiva approached, their expressions softening as they saw Luna in Jace's arms. "The vault is dormant," they said. "The weapon's threat is gone. For now." Jace's jaw tightened. "For now? You mean this could happen again?" Tiva's gaze was heavy. The vault is ancient, its secrets vast. But Luna's link is broken. She's free. Luna sat up, leaning on Jace, her strength returning. Free, she echoed, her voice a mix of awe and exhaustion. I didn't think I'd ever. Jace squeezed her hand, his heart full. You're more than a key. Luna, you're everything. Her laugh was soft, a melody that warmed the cold bay. Careful, human. Keep talking like that, and I'll never let you go. Good, he grinned, pulling her closer. I'm not planning on leaving. Tiva cleared their throat, a rare hint of amusement in their eyes. We must depart. The Dravex will regroup, and your human ship is still near. Jace stood, helping Luna up, her body pressed against his, their bond unshaken. The Aurelian ship waited, its hatch open, and they boarded, the bay's chaos fading behind them. As the ship lifted off, the asteroid shrinking below. Jace glanced at Luna, her white hair catching the cabin's light, her fox-like ears perked. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, but with her, it felt like home. The ship jumped to hyperspace, stars blurring into streaks, and Tiva joined them, their voice softer. Luna, your place is with us, on Oralis, but... They glanced at Jace, a grudging respect in their eyes. Your path is your own. Luna's hand tightened on Jace's. I'm not leaving him, she said, her voice firm. He's my family now. Jace's chest swelled, and he pulled her into a kiss, slow and deep, heedless of Tiva's presence. She melted into him, her warmth a promise, and when they parted, her eyes sparkled with mischief. You're bold for a technician, she teased. Yeah, well, he smirked. You're worth it. The cabin hummed, the Aurelians working quietly, and Jace felt a weight lift. The Orion's reach was behind them, the Dravex scattered, the Keeper gone, but the vault's secrets lingered, a whisper of future challenges. For now, though, they were safe, together. Days later, on a lush Aurelian moon, Jace and Luna stood under a canopy of glowing trees, their leaves casting soft light. The air was sweet, alive with alien songs, and Luna's fur outfit had been replaced with a flowing Aurelian gown, her white hair adorned with gemstones. Jace, in simple Aurelian attire, felt out of place but whole, her hand in his. You sure about this? He asked, nodding toward the horizon, where Oralis awaited. Me? A human? Crashing your world? She laughed, her ears twitching. You've crashed worse. Besides, my people need to meet the man who saved their key. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. I didn't save you. You saved me. Her glow pulsed, warm and inviting. We saved each other. They kissed under the alien sky, the galaxy stretching above, its dangers and wonders theirs to face. The Aurelians had offered Jace a place among them, a chance to learn their tech, to build a life with Luna. He'd accepted, his technician's curiosity alight, but it was her strength, her laugh, her touch, that made it home. As they walked toward a waiting Aurelian craft, Luna's voice was soft. What's next, Jace? He grinned, the future bright. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Together? The craft lifted off, carrying them toward Oralis, their bond a star in the dark. The vault's shadow was gone, the Keeper silenced, and though the galaxy held new threats, Jace and Luna were ready, their love a light that would guide them through any storm.